What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is DJ Gearbolt, and today we're going to break down how I make my music. Let's get into it. So this is a video I've wanted to make for a long time, and it's really cool that I can break this down. It's something I've wanted to do for a while to kind of show you, because I'm knees deep in making my new album right now, and so I figured this is something I could show you guys, kind of a little behind the scenes of what it takes for me to make my music, and why it takes so long sometimes. So let's get into it. So the first thing, we've got our FL Studio open here. The first thing I do is we've got a blank canvas. So what I like to do is just start with a basic beat. Now I've been doing a lot of 128. So house, I've been making a lot of house music. So I'm going to set this to a house beat. I'm going to type this in. 130 would work, but I'm going to go 128. Because 128 is your standard house beat per minute. If you've never used FL Studio, right here in the top is your beats per minute. You can right click on this and then you can type in your value, or you can set one of the presets on the side here for your beats per minute. Now I'll open up the channel rack right here, and this will show me everything that I have in my full layout, and I'll get into that in a minute. So you have presets here, and I'll use those as a base, but I'll eventually, as I get into the song, I'll pull out those presets and put in my own drums or whatever I want, instrumentation. I'll put that in there custom. So we're going to start with a simple 4-beat bass. 1, 2, 3, 4. And since I'm doing house music, there's always an offset hi-hat when it comes to house music. Not always, but majority of the time, in like 70% of your songs, you're going to find there's an offset hi-hat. And what I mean by that is right here in the hi-hat section, I'm going to go every third beat is a hi-hat, and you'll hear what I mean in just a second. This is your basic house beat. So we're going to throw in a snare now. There's your basic house beat, okay? So I'll start with something like that. Now what I want to do is create a brand new pattern for this. So I'm going to open up my arrangement. That was the word I was thinking of. So open up my arrangement, and here's the pattern that I just created on the left hand side here. What I'm going to do is rename and color this, because it is our drum pattern. Drums, and then I always make my drums red. I don't know why I've done that, but since I started using FL, I've always made my drums red. And then when it comes to FL Studio, I like to work from the top all the way to the bottom. So I'll work across the board here as we get into this, but my drums are always at the top. And some people lay things out differently than me, but I like working from the top down. So now that I've done that, we have our drum pattern created, and there you go. So there's our basic drum pattern. That's kind of how I'll start. I always start with my drums just so I have a groundwork to kind of work off of. So we'll start with the drums. The next thing I like to do is I have a lot of sample packs that I'll use. So I'll go to my desktop here. I've got a lot of sample packs. Ghost Hack is the company that I really like when it comes to like samples, because they have a lot of good stuff. They have a good range of different sample packs, from everything from rhythm to melodic bass to techno to just everything you can think of. And so I kind of, the first pack I ever bought from them, I think was like a tech house pack. And I think I actually have that right here. Yeah. So the tech house pack is pretty good. I'm actually going to start from this. But what I was saying is Ghost Hack is one of many different companies that make a sample pack for you to buy and download. And then you can use all those samples to create music. So that's kind of how I've done it throughout the years. And we're going to start here with let's start with I don't know. Let's see what they have here. These are all one shots. And none of these I'm really going to use. I need a bass line. So what I like to do typically is I'll start with the drums and then I'll bring in a bass line. So what I'm going to do right now is actually create my own bass line. So right up here in your channel, you create a new pattern. I'm going to create a new pattern. I'm going to call this bass riff 1, and then I'm going to make it blue. Yeah, do that. Bass riff 1, and then what I'm going to do is find a bass that I like. You can go down here in the bottom left and search for any instrument. If you've never used FL, the search bar is in that bottom left, so you can search for a bunch of stuff there, and it's really handy. I'm going to find something just juicy. I want a good fat clean bass, and I can adjust it later. There you go. I like that. So we'll go with this. Yeah, we'll go with that. So what I'll do is I'll find whatever I like, and then I'll open up my channel rack, and I'm going to drag this in here and add it to my channel rack. Then I'm going to set it to track 5. One thing to note when it comes to Fruity Loops is make sure, and this is all DAWs, this isn't just Fruity Loops, but when it comes to creating music, one thing that I didn't do that I now do because I've learned the hard way is I line everything out. Everything has got its own set channel. And the reason that I do that is because I have to go in and EQ everything, and I'll show you that in a minute. But so everything has to be on its own set channel so that you can adjust and clean up the sound. So now that we've got our bass in there, what I'm going to do is go into our arrangement, and we've got our bass riff here. What I'm going to do is drop this in here. I like doing it, sometimes I'll do 2 measures for a bass riff, and you know what, I'll do that for this one too. I'm going to go 2 measures, and essentially a measure is 4 beats per measure. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 2 measures. So I'm going to make this bass riff 2 measures long. And what I'm going to do now is go into my channel rack right here at the top, open this up. It'll show you your bass here. Click on this first note here, and that'll create a note for it. Then what I'm going to do is open up our arrangement, double click on the bass riff, and it'll open it up to where you can edit this little section, and you should be able to So I'm gonna mess around with this pattern and start creating my own pattern and sound for this bass riff. Now, I don't know why it started this high on the octaves or on the range here, but what I'm going to do is move these. Let me move these down to the lower octave here. So that's it's a full scale essentially all the way down an octave. So okay, so that's a simple bass line. I'm going to adjust this a little bit, but this is just an example of how I kind of create these patterns and ideas in my head. And then once I'm done with that, I'll put it all together, and you have Now, one thing I'm noticing is the resonation. It resonates way too long. It's got way too much, it resonates way too long and carries way too long. And so what I'm going to do is go into the channel rack. I'm going to open up the actual instrument here. See how long that is? So what I'm going to do is now there's an in and an out on this. So what I'm going to do is actually shorten the out up so it's a shorter note, and it'll cut off sooner. So now we should have a shorter note. And I like that, but I'm actually going to move this whole thing down another octave because it is it's just a little bit too, it's a higher note than I want. So we're going to start here. There we go. So now we've got the base of the track. Now this is just a basic example of how I would make something or get started in crafting something like this. And we're going to talk about what I do now that I've got a couple tracks in here. What I like to do is open up my my mixer. And so since like I was saying earlier, it's good to have every single instrument, everything that you're using on its own individual track, so that you can adjust the EQ of it. Now, it's very important that you do this because when it comes to like adjusting the levels and everything, you really want to focus in on making sure everything's got its own channel. So we're going to start here at channel 5 on the bass that we just worked on. On the side here, you have your slots, and what I like to do first thing on every single channel is add a Fruity Parametric EQ. And what this will do is I'm able to adjust the sound wave and essentially audio design this to sound the way I want. So as you see here, we're going to play this, and you can see the waveform. This is untouched, but you can see kind of where it sits. Now, if I want to add more bass, a good rule of thumb is pull out the bass on this side and pull out the high end on this side. So you kind of have a hill, a mound there, so that you focus in on whatever the same goes for if it's a higher end frequency, you want to focus that whole pattern over to match what your waveform is. You want to match this to your waveform. And that's not always the case with every instrument, but it's a good rule of thumb to do, not only with instruments, but with vocals too, is you want to match the waveform as close as you can. You can adjust it and you can sound design it yourself to make it sound the way you want it to. So I'm going to reset this. I don't need that much bass on this, so I'm going to reset it, bring it back down. But I am going to pull out the high end just a little bit, so it's not as it's subtle. It's not as aggressive. But that is why it's important to have an EQ on every single track. It's also important to have every single instrument on its own channel so that you can equalize it and adjust it and sound design it how you need. Okay, so now I'm going to add a kind of a melody on top of the bass line, and what I want to do is go into one of these kits that I've got, and I want to find something that kind of matches the vibe, and there's a whole bunch that I could pick from. The nice thing with Ghost Hacks kits is they're very laid out. They're laid out very well. So you have a few options. This is dry. You have the MIDI, which is just a preset for your MIDI. You can mess around with it. They've got them made for you to mess around with. And then, so the dry is there's no effect on it. Anytime you see a dry or a wet, when it's dry, there's no effect. When it's wet, there are effects. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So that is dry. Here's the wet version. There's the wet version of that. It's got what sounds like reverb added to it. So it's got some effects added to that. That's the only difference between dry and wet. Dry is just empty. It's just the straight sound. And then the wet has effects and different sounds added to it. So we're going to find one here. Another thing to note is you want to be in the same key. It's crucial if you want. You can adjust these. So if you find one that you really like, you could adjust the pitch until it matches the key that you're in. It's tough to do that, so you want to stay within, you know, the range of what you're working with. So I'm going to find one that's in the key of C. We'll see if we can work in that. So one thing that I like to do is I'll add atmosphere, and a lot of these packs will have like atmospheric. It depends on the pack you get, but some of them will have an atmosphere. So when I'm creating these tracks, I like to add this into the background so it adds some filler to the track, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go in and find one. This is in C minor, but I'm going to adjust it to match the key properly. So let's open up our arrangement here. And then I'm going to just drag and drop this in, and then I can adjust it as needed. So so it's way too loud. You can hear that in you know, it's way too more, it's way louder than everything else in the track itself. So what I'm going to do now is make sure that this new thing that I just added is on channel 6. So it's got its own set channel. Then I'm going to go to channel 6. I'm going to add that parametric EQ, and once again pull the high end and the low end out. You want to pull both of those out so you got that mound there. And I don't want it so aggressive that it's bleeding out over the bass. I want the bass kind of the most prominent thing, one of the most prominent things. The drums and the bass is essentially what's going to lead any good house track. So you don't want to have so much noise that you can't hear those. So with something like an atmosphere like this, you want to pull that back just subtly enough so that you can hear it, but it's not so overwhelming, it's bleeding over everything else. Sounding pretty good right now, and since it's in C minor, it blends pretty well with the C major. It's right there. I mean, it's a half step difference between the two. So it's really cool that, you know, you can just kind of drag and drop a lot of this. What takes the longest when it comes to making a track is the editing and the final touches, going in and EQing everything, making sure everything's lined out the way it needs to go, and then fine-tuning everything is what really takes the longest. So this bass riff is pretty simple. If I was really just diving into this, what I would do is add a little bit of variation to this, because it is a simple bass line. So what I'm going to do is throw in a little bit of variation into this bass line. So that adds just enough variation so that the bass line isn't so stagnant, so plain. You know, you want to add a little bit of variation to it. So let's hear that now. So we're building this track, and it's starting to come together really, really good. Now, this is the time where I will go in and edit the drums, because the bass drums are never, not that you can't do a lot with them, but they're just kind of basic. They're just basic. So here's our kick. Once again, all of this is found under your hierarchy, the channel rack, not the hierarchy, but the channel rack. And sometimes it'll have just either the audio or unsorted, and I like to go to all so that I have everything right there. Everything I'm using in my track, in the whole project, will be right there. So what I'm going to do is find a different kick. This kick is good. It's an 808 kick, very common, very popular, but it's just not what I want. So I'm going to go down to the search bar and type in kick, And there's a whole bunch of kicks. There's a ton of different kicks here. And once again, I like to use some of the Ghost Hack ones. There's a whole bunch of kicks to use, but I like the Ghost Hack kicks. I don't know why, but they're just good. They just sound better to me. There we go. Let's use this one. And I'll go in and EQ this so it brings it forward a little more. Now let's find a clap. Go down to my Ghost Hack claps here. I like that one. Let's use that one for now. Let's throw this in here. Let's actually, so one thing to note is when you start editing the drums, make sure you double click on this, or at least click on this side channel here so that it is selected, because if you don't do that, then it won't edit that actual track. It'll start, whatever this is selected on the left hand side will be the thing that you're adding either drums or whatever on your channel rack to. So make sure you have that selected. Then go into your channel rack, and this will be our drum pattern. Yeah, I like that. Nice. That's fun. That's fun. Okay, so now we need the hi-hat. Now, good rule of thumb when it comes to house music, and this is something that Riot 10 told me about, shout out Riot 10, is when it comes to house music, you want a closed hi-hat. Now, a closed hi-hat sounds a little different than your regular hi-hat. This is a regular hi-hat. It's a basic hi-hat, but a closed hi-hat sounds a little different. And there's a little bit of difference there. It just sounds, I don't really know how to explain it, but when it comes to house music, good rule of thumb is always use a closed hi-hat. Just sounds better. Let's go with this one. Okay, now let's open up the whole thing and have a listen to what we've done. So I don't like the double clap, and the reason I don't like the double clap at the end is just because it doesn't match our bass line as well. So I'm going to open this back up and remove that. What I think I'm going to do is actually add another clap here. And I may remove the snare off the front end. You know what? I'm going to actually reverse this. I want the clap on the end and no snare on the end. And then I'm going to go into channel 2 and adjust the clap. Now this is why everything has to be on its own channel. Once again, you want to go to your equalizer, your EQ, and you want to adjust to fit the waveform as best you can so that it's more prominent in the track. Whatever sound you're trying to use, you want to EQ it so that you can bring it forward or backward in the track. I'm actually going to do the same thing to the hi-hat, add a EQ to it, pull the top and the bottom out. And once again, you're trying to make everything as even as you can without bleeding over everything else. So you don't want too much hi-hat, you don't want too much bass. You're trying to make a good even mix of everything, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge, like, to hear it for yourself and then play it for others, and maybe they don't like it because it's not really sounding the way they like. But it's, again, tailor it to yourself. That first, tailor it to yourself first, and then kind of work on it as you go. It's tricky. Sound design, especially like this, can be tricky for some people, but just enjoy what you make, and make it for you. Don't make it for other people. Just make it how you enjoy it. So I like that. Let's see. So the bass, again, I'm gonna actually EQ this. I want a fatter, like a big, thick sounding bass here. Not too much, but just enough. Beautiful. Okay, I think we're about there. And okay, so we've pretty much got everything started on how I would start production for a track, especially like a house track. I've been in a house groove, and I've been working on my album, so this has been really fun to kind of sit down and show you what it takes for me to make a track. So we've done the drums, we've done the bass line, and we've done some atmosphere. Now let's put it all together and see what we got. And that's pretty much it. That is how I make my music. It is a lot of work. It is a lot of fun for me to sit down and just do this for hours and just grind away and start working on music. And it's really cool for me to have the talent to be able to do this, and the knowledge and know-how, and to be able to just kind of, if I wanted to, just sit down and create a whole song in a matter of hours, you know. That's really cool, and it's something that I've wanted to share with you guys. And for anybody wanting to start out in music production, Fruit Loops FL Studio is a great starting tool. It's very simple, and you can do a lot with it. It's a great DAW, and you can do a lot with it. I've done a lot with it. After I'm done with this album that I'm currently working on, I'm going to be moving to Ableton and start working with that, because Ableton is kind of the industry standard when it comes to music production. They all kind of do the same, and you know, I've just wanted to learn Ableton for a while, so I'm going to be moving on to that and start learning that after I'm done with this album. And if I don't like it, I'll stick with Fruit Loops FL Studio, and we'll go from there. But that's pretty much it. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. This has been a breakdown of how I make my music, and it's a lot of fun for me to show you guys this. And yeah, with that being said, thank you for watching. Stay awesome, stay safe, and rock on, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.